Howdy everybody, it's Randy Ray here at The Literate Texan with the continuation of my Driftwood Ranch library tour. And so this is number 5 in this sequence of videos, and there's a whole mess of books that was sitting on this. I've moved on to bookcase number 2, and this is bookshelf number 1. This is reasonably organized compared to some of my other stuff. The first section of this has to do with Sherlock Holmes books. Huge Sherlock Holmes fan. Anybody who's watched the channel long enough knows that. And the first book I've got on the shelf here is The Return of Moriarty. And if you're not familiar with Sherlock Holmes at all, Moriarty is his arch nemesis. He is the Lex Luthor to Sherlock Holmes' Superman. And this is an unauthorized sequel, or I guess it's authorized, I don't know. It's written by John Gardner. Wasn't authorized by Arthur Conan Doyle because Arthur Conan Doyle died long before this was written. But I believe it's part of a trilogy about the return of Moriarty in much the same respect as there were some books about the return of Sherlock Holmes, who didn't really die at his hands after all. Anyway, I'm proud of that book, but I'm more proud of this book here. To me, it's more collectible. A. Conan Doyle, The Croxley Master, and Other Tales of the Ring and Camp. So this is a really neat book. It's probably got some use coming up for Summer of Sport, which is another event on BookTube that I am taking part in. But I really love this edition because it's very old. New York, George H. Doran Company, whatever that is. Well, I believe this was published in 1930 something. Oh golly, it's older than that. This is from 1913, so it's in really nice shape for a book that old, especially for a book that old that's coming from my library, because, you know, my books are meant to be read, not necessarily stored. Then I've got Shadows Over Baker Street here. Okay, so this is cool. You know, this is Sherlock Holmes enters the nightmare world of H.P. Lovecraft, and you see a lot of these kinds of crossover books. Generally, they're kind of like spaghetti westerns in a respect that you'll wind up with one really, really outstanding story and then a lot of other stories that aren't so great. And that's kind of how spaghetti western is. You've got one really great actor. He's on his way up or down in his career. And so you get to see him, but then everybody else is just kind of an extra. Okay, so I've got The Exploits of Sherlock Holmes here. This is a collection of Sherlock Holmes adventures based on unsolved cases from the original stories. So one of the running jokes in Sherlock Holmes's stories is they're always talking about various adventures that he's never published the details to. And these were written by Adrian Conan Doyle, Arthur Conan Doyle's son, or maybe his nephew, I'm not sure which, and John Dixon Carr, who was a legitimate master of the locked room mystery. So I don't know, half these books are under one author's name and half of them are under the other. I suspect that John Dixon Carr had a strong hand in writing all of them, nonetheless. So anyway, cool book. Hadn't read it yet, but I'm looking forward to digging into it. This I've read a little bit more of. This is The Unknown Conan Doyle. Uncollected Stories by Arthur Conan Doyle. There's 33 stories in here. You know, many of them are horror stories. But, yeah, Arthur Conan Doyle wrote a whole lot more than just Sherlock Holmes stories. And I think he was a little disappointed that the stuff that he thought was more important in his writing career never caught on the way Sherlock Holmes did. Forgive me, I'm on medication that makes me thirsty, so I have to hydrate. Here's a book called The Lost Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, based on the original radio plays by Dennis Green and Anthony Butcher. Pretty cool. Haven't read that one yet. And then, of course, I do have my collected works of the canon here. The Complete Sherlock Holmes Volumes 1 and 2. This is the Doubleday edition. And these do not have dust jackets on them, sadly. But I try to revisit the entire canon once a year. I did not succeed this year, but the year ain't over yet, is it? I may get back to it and read all of them. I hope to, anyway. And I think that's all my Sherlock Holmes stuff from this shelf, although I could be mistaken. Then I've got some other cool stuff here. Here's an Anthony Trollope book called The Warden. Don't know much about it, but I know that some of my friends that I admire on YouTube are also big fans of Anthony Trollope. He's a contemporary of Charles Dickens. I have a whole bunch of his stuff over there too. The Man Who Was Thursday by G.K. Chesterton, which I've heard of repeatedly. Still haven't gotten around to reading it. Really short. I don't know why I haven't finished it. But, you know, there's another one like that, The 39 Steps, which isn't part of this particular bookshelf. But I just couldn't quite get through it. I don't know why. I don't hate the book. Just couldn't finish it. And it's not long either. Go figure. And now for something completely different. Here's a book called Role Playing by Kathy Yardley. And this is one of these silly romance novels that I like to read with my daughter every now and then. I thought this one was exceptional, though. I think she'll really like it when she gets to it. It's one of the ones Mary hasn't read yet. So, okay. You get to see some of the eclectic nature of my shelving here, too, because the next one is The Wind-Up Girl by Paolo Bacigalupi. I'm sure I'm mangling that name something horrible. This won both the Hugo and the Nebula Awards. One of my reading projects, and I'm talking a little bit more about some of my reading aspirations and goals lately than I have in the past, but one of my goals is to read everything that's ever won the Hugo Award. And so here's a little something from the back of this. Anderson Lake is a company man. Aggregane's calorie man in Thailand. Undercover as a factory manager, Anderson combs Bangkok's street markets in search of foodstuffs thought to be extinct, hoping to reap the bounty of history's lost calories. There he encounters Emiko. Emiko is the wind-up girl, a strange and beautiful creature. One of the new people, Emiko is not human. She is an engineered being, crash-grown and programmed to satisfy the decadent whims of a Kyoto businessman, but now abandoned to the streets of Bangkok. Regardless, as soulless beings by some, devils by others, new people are slaves, soldiers and toys of the rich in a chilling near future in which calorie companies rule the world. The oil age is past, and the side effects of bioengineered plagues run rampant across the globe. What happens when calories become currency? What happens when bioterrorism becomes a tool for corporate profits? When said bioterrorism's genetic drift forces mankind to the cusp of post-human evolution? Award-winning author Paolo Bacigalupi delivers one of the most highly acclaimed science fiction novels of the 21st century. This sounds fantastic to me. It makes me want to drop everything else I'm reading and start reading it, actually. That sounds really, really good. So I've got two more stacks of books from this particular shelf, and that'll wrap this up. I have a lady friend, went out with a few times earlier, well, I say earlier this year, it was earlier last year, and I asked her for a selection of maybe 6 or 7 books that might help me to get to know her taste in books a little bit. The very fact that she's a reader at all is a big pleasant surprise first. But, you know, I haven't read all of these yet. I've read parts of some of them. This is called Just Kids by Patty Smith. Okay. And this was a nice little memoir. I'm about halfway through it. Was listening to that one on audio. I really liked it. I haven't finished it. Here's Another Bullshit Night in Suck City by Nick Flynn. Don't know what this is about, but I love the title. Looking forward to reading it. The Broom of the System is not a recommendation from my lady friend, but it is written by her favorite author, David Foster Wallace. So I do have it. This is a novel that he's written, one of his early novels. Consider the Lobster and Other Essays by David Foster Wallace. Okay, now this I read all the way through, cover to cover. Sometimes it's brilliant. Sometimes it's whatever. I did enjoy the cover essay very much, though. And then, finally, from her list of books, Edie, American Girl. And so that's going to be a cool project to get along with. I did read another book from that same set of recommendations, and it was one of David Wong's books, but it wasn't the first one. It wasn't John Dies at the End. It was, can't remember the name of it, but he goes by his real name now, Jason Parkin. Interesting author. Good horror stuff. Well written. And so, getting down to the end of this list, even more diverse, even more eclectic, as if, one of them dropped on the ground here. I got it? Boom, there it is. The Winner's Guide to Casino Gambling. Okay, this covers things like junkets, casino credit, where to gamble, money management, casino etiquette. There's a glossary of casino gambling terms, which all was so updated and cool and new in the year 1985. Many of you know that I made a lot of my living writing about gambling. I'm a journalist of sorts with a very specific beat. Okay, so next to that, a concise treasury of great poems, which was a gift from a lady friend of mine who was a school teacher, not an English teacher. Normally when I date teachers, I date English teachers, but this lovely woman was a home economics teacher. 437 poems by 121 poets. But this is actually a treasured possession of mine. I love it very much. She was a sweet lady. Still a sweet lady. I hadn't talked to her in a while. Then I've got the Rules of Neighborhood Poker according to Hoyle. This was written by Stuart Wolpe. Let's see how the bottom part's cut off there, so I can't read the full name there. But if you want to know how to play different neighborhood poker games, this has got the rules for them. Pretty interesting book, as I recall. I had a lot of fun playing some new games of poker that I hadn't heard of with that one. If you're into more serious poker, and I don't know how many people this would apply to these days, I've got 7-Card Stud for Advanced Players by David Sklansky, Mason Malmuth, and Ray Z here. Okay. Excellent book if you can find anybody who's willing to play 7-Card Stud poker with you anymore. Yeah, old game. But David Sklansky, Mason Malmuth, you want to read good books about poker, especially limit poker, those are your guys right there. Years ago, I worked for a company called Hotels.com, and one of the managers there, or he was actually vice president, I asked him one day what the best book on salesmanship he'd ever read was, and he answered immediately, The Greatest Miracle in the World by Og Mandino, which is a blessedly short little book that he had me read, and I'm very glad I did it. It's about 105 pages long. Anyway, Andy, thanks for the recommendation. I may go back and reread this year, because I am working on a project where I read 100 self-help books in a year. I'm going to read 100 self-help books, so you don't have to. And then I've got Blackjack's Winning Formula, the revised and expanded edition, Money-Making Techniques for Atlantic City, Nevada, and the Caribbean by Jerry L. Patterson. And so I bought this, well, I don't even remember when, but this covers some of the basics of blackjack. It's got the winning formula in here. The problem with books like this, you know, where they explain the secrets of winning blackjack, is that by the time this makes it into print, the casinos know all about it already, and they're already thwarting those countermeasures. You know, you got to stay 2 steps ahead of the casino, and it's impossible to do if there's a book available at the gift shop at the casino where you're playing. And this is a book I want to replace, actually. This is Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, the classic novel with recipes for modern tea time treats by Martha Stewart. Okay, so I started to read this, and I'm sure the recipes are great, but it just doesn't seem to fit the classic literature aspect of the book at all for me. I'm either reading a novel or I'm reading how to make tea cakes. I don't want to do both at the same time. So that's probably about 25, 26, maybe even 27 books off of bookcase number 2, bookshelf number 1. This was library tour number 5, and I will be back soon with more videos. Thanks for watching, and I hope you're doing well out there. Stay hydrated, stay sexy, please.